whenever I asked the bigger artist, how do I find my style? And their response was like, it takes time and, you know, just practice more. It always, like, pissed me off. It came off to me as really dismissive and really patronizing. And so I didn't really understand what they were saying until it happened. So I think what the biggest problem is a lot of the times when they talk about it takes time or just put more practice in, they don't actually like elaborate on their story on how they got to the point where their art looks like the way it does. So I wanted to take a second to talk about my phases of art and the like events that led me to make it so my art looks the way it does, because it looks weird now. and the way it started looks way different from the way it ended up. So the reason why that is because I put time and I practice more, and also extraneous extra events that led me to make my art look like this. So with all that being said, this is why. So initially started because I was in a D&D campaign, and I was really obsessed with the story and the characters that was going on. So I wanted to express that because it was the only thing I could think about, and the campaigns were only once a week, or the sessions were only once a week, and so I wanted to do something about it. But whenever I tried to draw something, it always came up really goofy like this. So I was insecure about that, so I didn't really share a lot of it until I read Homunculus, which is it's a pretty good manga. I can't really recommend it because there's some shit in there. But when I read it, I noticed that a lot of the art was really questionable, and there are some scenes that made me like, I don't know about that. But because of that gave me the confidence to draw up a few pages worth of manga for just the thing. And so after that, I started drawing a few pages of manga every once in a while, and that's like the first stage, is just reading Homunculus, realizing that good art doesn't necessarily mean good comic, and good comic doesn't necessarily mean good art. You can have a good comic that has shitty art, and that's perfectly acceptable and sellable and good. So that was stage one. So after a little bit, I noticed that a lot of my art was starting to look a little bit gray, because I wouldn't put any color into it, and so it would just be black and white all the time. And that was the only thing that I did. And sometimes I would add gray in there as like an offset for kind of the beginning of cell shading, but I didn't really fully follow through. But also my anatomy wasn't looking too good, and so I wanted to practice both of those in one fell swoop because I was getting really insecure about both of them. And so that's where I came up with this piece. And I really like this piece because it has decent perspective, it's really eye-catching, pretty decent anatomy, and it was my first leap into color. So that's when I started using flat colors. I still didn't really lean into rendering quite yet because I was still a little bit nervous about that, and so that's why all the colors are flat and they're just being shaded with cross-hatching. That's like stage 2. Stage 3 is when I started cross-hatching with color. That started with like this piece, and that's because I went on a backpacking trip, and I really wanted to capture the beauty of the mountains, but I couldn't do that without like really thinking about the vastness of it. And so every time I tried to render grass without like using depth, then I just couldn't get it to look far, and I couldn't get it to look fast, and I couldn't do any of it without like ultimately losing detail. And so I decided to add color into my cross-hatching, and that's where I came up with this piece. And that's where that started happening. That went on for a few pieces, like also this one. And this one is cool because this is also like when I started leaning into more surrealist topics, when I started doing weird shit in my art. I remember I watched a video about how the reason why in part 6 of JoJo's the Jolene's blood starts boiling in the zero gravity is because gravity is what affects temperature and the boiling point temperature of water. And so even in like 100-degree weather, which is like super normal, your blood would start boiling just from the lack of pressure. And so I wanted to capture that. But I also saw that spaghettification is not an instantaneous process for black holes. That shit could take forever to get to the event horizon. And so I also wanted to capture that. But also, I read that the way black holes work is that every direction is to the center of the black hole. So if you look up, down, left, all of it is now the center of the black hole because of what what happens when you get caught in the gravitational pull of a black hole. So I wanted to express that. So the way I did that was using was this. This is how I know that. Now, after a little bit, I got insecure again because people started telling me that like cross-hatching doesn't really make your art look great. It's like ugly and for amateurs, and I'd been drawing for a decent amount of time at this point, and so I felt really irked by that. And so I went and I started trying to draw without cross-hatching, and that didn't turn out super well, as you can see here. And so then I also started like combining the two, and that led to mixed results. I personally think that some of these are decent. I think that others of them aren't. But I was insecure about how my cross-hatching looked to other people, but I was also insecure about how my blending looked. So what ended up happening was I combined the two of them for a little bit, and that's why my pieces looked like this for a little time. After a while, I finally bought a new computer. I think I must have been like in sophomore year of high school, like it was that long ago, and I think it was junior year maybe. But I finally bought a computer, and so that meant I could finally start working on my game, which was a dream of mine since I was 8. And so I started working on a bunch of sprite sheets like this, and so that was pretty much all I did for like half a year. Each one was like 10 hours to make. It was a lengthy process. It took a while, but probably halfway through that, so 3 months into the sprite sheets, I opened up an Instagram account in order to advertise my game because I thought game development was going to be less time than it ended up being. And so I started drawing in like a cartoony instant style so that way I could do it weekly. And that ended up leading to the cartoons that you see here. And that's where that came from. But then, after a bit, I got insecure because people were saying that like outlines were too childish, and like forcing that into your art made it look cartoony and like lame. And so I was like, okay, well that's mean. So I still kept doing the cartoons, but on the side I tried experimenting without outlines, and I also started reading Chainsaw Man, and it had really absurd cover arts that they had for the volumes. And so I was really intrigued by that, and so I went and I started using Insane Colors 2 for like not a long time, but for a little bit. I started using high saturated colors that didn't make sense considering the color theory, and then also cell shading, so that way I could avoid. So finally I stopped working on Volcrania, and the reason why I was using those like really simplistic pixel art style and like why I was making sprite sheets is because RPG Maker had a really restrictive thing where you can only have 48 by 48 tiles, and so that's why or 64 by 64 for like sprites in battle mode. So in order to respect that, I tried my best to keep my design simplistic, and that's why they looked like that. But after that, when I stopped caring about Volcrania and I started working on my own stuff, I started, I still liked the cartoon style that I had, and I was getting a little bit bored of the like outline-less style that I had. I started thinking, I don't really care what these people think. I'm just gonna start doing my own thing. And so I tried my best to combine those cartoons with my borderless style and put them together. And the way I did that was I combined my my knowledge of colors and lighting. I also combined my knowledge of like anatomy and poses And then on the artistic style, or my cartooning style, I combined my simplistic shapes and the pixeliness, the like low amount of pixels. So all of that together combined became these pieces. And these like this is how I've been drawing for a while now, because I really enjoy it. To me, it looks really cool. And so now whenever I'm doing concept art, that's how I lean. And that's how I have the style that I have right now. I'm not saying it's going to be like this forever, of course. The whole point of this video is that it fluctuates. The style that you have right now is your style. It's your style. And every artist you talk to or see, you'll notice little things that change over time. If you go to the most recent drawing from, Tatsuki Fujimoto, and you look at his first drawing, it's going to look different. Even if both of them look really high quality and cool, they have different understandings of anatomy and color and experimentation at the time that it's drawn. So that's why, artist styles are so unique, and that's why people tell you that it takes time, because it's not a specific thing you can do. There's no way you can practice having a unique art style. It's just the events in your life are going to trickle down in a domino effect to where what you become as a person and how your art reflects that is going to be really special. It's going to be special, and it's going to be unique, and it's going to be yours. So don't worry when people say it takes time. It's not a dismissive comment. It's just not advice. It's like it's the same thing as saying 2 + 2 equals 4. It's not like, it's not advice to say that, because there's nothing you can do to change that or get to that conclusion. It's just a matter of fact. It's going to take time, because your flow of art style is going to be your flow of life, basically. Yeah, don't be discouraged. You have your own art style right now, and you're going to have another one later, and it's going to be cool. It's going to be unique. It's going to be yours. So keep drawing, and have a good night.